Imagine it's 1912 in the small, sleepy town of Opelousas, Louisiana. Life moves slow, like the humid summer air. But one sunny afternoon in August, that peaceful rhythm is shattered forever. A 4-year-old boy named Bobby Dunbar vanishes without a trace. The Dunbar family, Percy, Leslie, and their 2 sons were on a fishing trip at Swayze Lake. It was supposed to be a perfect family day. But as the sun began to set, they realized their oldest son, Bobby, was gone. Panic set in. They called his name, their voices echoing across the dark, still water, but only silence answered. An enormous search began immediately. The entire community, along with the local police, combed the swamps and dense cypress forests surrounding the lake. They found a child's footprints leading away from the lake and a small straw hat. But they didn't find Bobby. The most terrifying theory was that he had fallen into the alligator-infested waters of Swayze Lake. But his parents, Percy and Leslie, refused to accept that. They believed someone had taken their son. For 8 long months, the Dunbars lived in a state of agonizing uncertainty. They printed posters, offered rewards, and followed every lead, no matter how faint. The story of the missing boy spread across the country, a heartbreaking tale of a family torn apart. Then, in April of 1913, a glimmer of hope arrived. A report came from a small town in Mississippi, hundreds of miles away. Police had detained a traveling handyman named William Walters. With him was a young boy who bore a striking resemblance to the missing Bobby Dunbar. Walters insisted the boy was not Bobby. He claimed the child's name was Bruce Anderson, the son of a woman named Julia Anderson who worked for his family, and that he had permission to travel with him. But the authorities weren't convinced. The news reached Percy and Leslie Dunbar, who immediately rushed to Mississippi, their hearts torn between hope and dread. Could this really be their lost son? When Leslie Dunbar first saw the boy, her reaction was not what anyone expected. She hesitated. The boy looked like Bobby, yes, but something was off. According to newspaper reports from the time, she looked at the child and said, "I don't know. I'm not sure. This was not the joyous reunion everyone had envisioned." The boy reportedly cried and seemed frightened of her. The authorities allowed the Dunbars to spend the night with the child. The next day, things changed. After giving him a bath and seeing certain moles and scars on his body, Leslie declared with absolute certainty, "He is my Bobby." The news exploded. It was a miracle. The lost boy was found. The town of Opelousas erupted in celebration. A parade was held to welcome Bobby home. Photos of the smiling, reunited family were splashed across newspapers nationwide. It was the happy ending everyone had been praying for. William Walters was arrested and charged with kidnapping. The case seemed closed. But this was far from the end of the story. It was just the beginning of an even deeper mystery. Just as the Dunbars were celebrating their supposed reunion, another mother's nightmare was just beginning. Julia Anderson, a poor, unmarried field hand, came forward. She swore that the boy the Dunbars had taken was her son, Bruce. She confirmed William Walters' story, explaining that she had allowed her son to travel with Walters for what was supposed to be a short trip while she looked for work. She pleaded with the authorities to return her child. The legal system, however, was not on her side. In a world where class and reputation mattered, the Dunbars were a respected, well-off family. Julia Anderson was a poor, single mother with very few resources. The press and public opinion quickly turned against her. When Julia was finally brought in to identify the boy, she faced a difficult situation. She hadn't seen her son in months. The child was now clean, well-dressed, and surrounded by the Dunbars. Like Leslie before her, she also hesitated. She said the boy looked like her son, but she couldn't be 100% sure right away. The press seized on her uncertainty, portraying her as an unreliable and unfit mother. A custody hearing was held. The court asked the boy to choose between the two women. Confused and likely overwhelmed, he was paraded in front of a crowd. 5 boys, including the one in question, were lined up. When asked to identify her son, Julia's initial pick was incorrect. The Dunbars, however, confidently identified the boy as Bobby. For the court, that was enough. They ruled that the child was, in fact, Bobby Dunbar. Julia Anderson was sent away, heartbroken and defeated. William Walters was convicted of kidnapping and spent years in prison before his case was eventually overturned due to the high cost of a retrial. He maintained his innocence until the day he died. Meanwhile, the boy who was now Bobby Dunbar returned to Louisiana and grew up with the Dunbar family. He lived a full life, got married, and had children of his own. But there were always whispers. Family anecdotes suggest he never quite felt like he belonged. He didn't seem to remember his early childhood, and some relatives noted that his personality was different from the boy who had disappeared. But the story of the miraculous reunion was so powerful that no one dared to question it. The family buried any doubts and moved on. The case of Bobby Dunbar became a legendary tale of hope, a family legend passed down through generations. That is, until nearly a century later. In the late 1990s, one of Bobby Dunbar's own grandchildren, a woman named Margaret Dunbar Cutright, began a personal quest to uncover the truth about her family's history. She started digging through old court documents, newspaper archives, and family letters. The more she read, the more inconsistencies she found. The stories didn't add up. The hesitation of both mothers, the conflicting testimonies, the public pressure, it all painted a picture that was far more complex than the simple tale of a lost boy found. Margaret was determined to find a definitive answer, once and for all. In 2004, the era of DNA testing offered a way to solve the mystery that had haunted families for almost 100 years. Margaret convinced her father, Robert Dunbar Jr., the son of the boy at the center of the mystery, to provide a DNA sample. That sample was then compared to a DNA sample from the son of the original Bobby Dunbar's younger brother, a direct descendant of the Dunbar family line. The results came back, and they were staggering. There was no genetic match. The man who had lived his entire life as Bobby Dunbar, the man Margaret knew as her grandfather, was not a Dunbar at all. The DNA proved that he was, in fact, Bruce Anderson, the son of Julia Anderson. The revelation turned history on its head. The celebrated reunion was a lie. The Dunbars had, unknowingly, raised another woman's child. Julia Anderson had been telling the truth all along. She had lost her son not to a kidnapper in the traditional sense, but to another grieving family and a justice system that failed her. This discovery brought a new wave of pain for both families. For the Andersons, it was a bitter vindication, confirmation of a lifelong injustice. For the Dunbars, it meant their cherished family story was built on a mistake, and the fate of the real Bobby Dunbar was, once again, a complete mystery. So, what happened to the real 4-year-old Bobby Dunbar? Most historians now believe the original theory was probably correct. He likely fell into Swayze Lake on that fateful day in 1912 and drowned. His body was never recovered, leaving a void that his desperate parents filled with the first plausible hope they could find. The case of Bobby Dunbar is more than just a story of a missing child. It's a haunting tale about the power of grief, the fallibility of memory, and our profound human need to believe what we want to be true, even when the evidence points elsewhere. It shows how a story, once told, can take on a life of its own, burying the truth for generations. The real tragedy isn't just about the boy who was lost, but also about the boy who was found and forced to live a life that wasn't his. Thanks for watching. What do you think really happened that day? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this story as fascinating as I did, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more dives into history's strangest mysteries. See you next time.